friends, welcome to TeachMe. Most probably you would be watching this video in either an Android smartphone or an iPhone. In case of iPhone, Apple designs and produces its own hardware and software. Apple is the only successful company in the smartphone market that produces its own hardware and software. Every smartphone will have two major parts in it. The first part is the hardware part. Apple designs its own hardware. It designs its own chip, its own display, and its own motherboard. The second part is the software part. Apple has a tremendous support of the iOS community. It designs its own software in-house. The iOS is built from the scratch by Apple. iOS, also known as iPhone OS, is a large community of developers contributing to the development of Apple software. These iOS developers are well paid by Apple. It is a win-win situation for Apple in building their iOS software. The main reason why Apple is still the most popular smartphone brand is that it develops, designs, and builds its own hardware and software. So you get an overall complete package from Apple named as an iPhone, which has faster software updates and faster hardware updates. But in the case of Android, the scenario for software and hardware is completely different. The software Android is created completely by Google. The hardware for Android is created by OEMs like Huawei, Xiaomi, Samsung, LG, and so on. So in case of Android, say Google develops the software and Samsung develops the hardware. So there is always a little gap between the hardware and software. Did you know that there are two versions of Android? The first version is called as the stock or vanilla Android. The second version is called the UI that OEMs make in Android. Stock Android means the pure Android that Google releases every year. It is the untouched form of Android that Google releases. But in the other case, Samsung develops its own retouched form of Android called as TouchWiz UI. Now, let me put forth a question before you. Which form of Android do you think will best suit for your phone? Is it the stock Android or the modified versions of Android, namely TouchWiz, MIUI, and so on? Before that, let me tell you a secret that why most of the brands like Samsung, Xiaomi, LG don't use stock Android. There are two main reasons for it. Reason number one is that to add features to the customers. The reason number two is actually a business strategy. Let us see this with an example. Say there are two brands, Samsung and LG. They want to make Android smartphones. If they both opt for stock Android, which one will the customer buy? Will the customer buy Samsung or LG? It's a confusing situation, right? So what these two brands do is that Samsung modifies Android and creates its own version of Android called TouchWiz UI. And LG creates its own modified version of Android and creates its own UI and sells it to the customer. The reason why they modify Android is so simple: to attract and be distinguished from their competitors. But here comes a problem. Google is the king of Android software. Google decides how Android will work on a phone. But Samsung and LG hired some Android engineers and developed their own versions of Android. In this case, there is a serious communication lag between the developers at Google and the developers at Samsung and LG. So whenever Google releases the next version of their Android software, what Samsung does is that it asks its developers to download the Android software and modify it to make it into the next version of TouchWiz UI. There is again a problem in it. Creating or modifying an Android software into a TouchWiz UI takes a lot of time to build and test successfully. Let us say the next version of Android, called Android O, is releasing tomorrow. Then it would take Samsung almost a complete year to release its TouchWiz UI, which has the latest Android operating system, Android O. It takes a lot of time for Samsung to upgrade their new Android operating system. This is the reason why your Android smartphone still runs on outdated Android Marshmallow or even the later Android Lollipop, even though Android Nougat has been released officially and the Android O developer preview has also been released. So what do you think? Which Android operating system would you opt for? So the important question here is, which Android should you prefer? Will it be the stock Android or will it be the custom Android? The answer is really simple. If you prefer faster software updates, good security and a good quality software to use, then you must blindly go for stock Android smartphones. If the above said points are not in your priority list, then you can go with any other branded smartphones. There is a good news for my viewers. There are some smartphone manufacturers who build their smartphones very close to stock Android. Motorola phones come with near stock Android experience. They don't add any bloatware in their software. The other smartphone brand that is very close to stock Android is the OnePlus. Hope this video helps you in your next smartphone purchasing decision. Thank you for watching this video. Good luck.